9 years ago, my sister ruined my wedding on purpose. She smiled the whole time she did it. This is the story of how I waited and how I made sure she never forgot my name again. 9 years ago, I stood in a wedding dress that cost me 4 months of savings, in a room full of people who came to watch me become someone's wife. And by the time the night ended, half of them were whispering about my sister instead. She didn't ruin my wedding with a scene. She didn't scream, she didn't cry, she didn't do anything a stranger would notice. She ruined it quietly, with a toast, a secret, and a smile that never once slipped. It took me 3 years to understand exactly what she'd done. It took me 6 more to build the exact moment I needed to pay her back. And when that moment finally came, at her own wedding, in front of everyone she'd ever wanted to impress, I didn't raise my voice either. I just told the truth. My name is Maria. I'm the older sister. My sister, Camilla, is 2 years younger than me, and for as long as I can remember, she was the favorite. I don't say that out of bitterness. I say it because it's simply what happened, and it shaped everything that came after. Camilla was the pretty one, the charming one, the one who could walk into a room and have everyone's attention within 30 seconds. I was the responsible one. The one who got good grades, the one who helped my mother with bills when my father left, the one who was, according to every relative at every holiday dinner, so mature for her age. Being mature for your age as a child is just another way of saying nobody is taking care of you the way they should. I don't blame my parents entirely. My mother worked 2 jobs. My father was gone by the time I was 11. Camilla needed attention because she was younger, because she acted out, because I understand now she was scared, the same as I was, just louder about it. I became the fixer. She became the one who got fixed for. By the time we were adults, the pattern was set in stone. I worked through college waiting tables. Camilla's tuition got covered because she needs the extra push. You're already so independent. I didn't fight it. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I didn't need anyone to notice. Then I met Daniel. Daniel was steady in a way nothing in my life had been. He noticed things. He noticed when I was tired, when I was upset, when I'd gone quiet because I'd learned a long time ago that going quiet was safer than asking for things. He was the first person who made space for me without me having to fight for it. We dated for 3 years. When he proposed, it was the first time in my adult life I remember feeling like something good was allowed to happen to me without a catch. I should have known better. Camilla cried when we told her. At the time, I thought they were happy tears. She hugged me so tight I nearly lost my breath, and she said, "You deserve this so much, Mari. You deserve everything good." I believed her completely. That's the part that still makes me angry looking back, not that she lied, but how well she did it. Planning the wedding, Camilla inserted herself into everything. She offered to help with vendors with the guest list with my dress fitting. I was grateful. I thought, finally, my sister and I are close the way sisters are supposed to be. She asked to give the maid of honor toast. Of course I said yes. Who else would I have asked? The wedding day itself was, for the first 6 hours, the best day of my life. My mother cried. Daniel cried when he saw me walk in. Even now, when I think about that specific moment, before everything else happened, I let myself remember that it was real. That part was real. Then came the reception. Then came the toasts. Camilla stood up with a champagne glass in her hand and a microphone in the other, and she started exactly the way you'd expect, a funny childhood story, a joke about how bossy I used to be, laughter from the tables. People were smiling. I was smiling. And then she said, and I remember this with a clarity that has never once faded, no matter how many years pass, I just have to say, Daniel, you're a braver man than most, because Maria doesn't exactly have the best track record with commitment. Remember Andres, sis? I mean, 3rd time's the charm, right? The room laughed, a small, uncomfortable laugh, the kind people give when they're not sure if something is a joke or not. But my new mother-in-law wasn't laughing. Daniel's business partners, who I'd only just met that week, weren't laughing either. And Daniel went very, very still beside me. Andres was an ex from years earlier. A relationship that ended for reasons that had nothing to do with me not committing, reasons Camilla knew perfectly well, because I had told her everything in confidence as a sister years before. She turned my own trust into a punchline, on a microphone at my wedding, in front of the one family I was trying to make a good first impression on. I smiled through the rest of the night because that's what you do. You smile, you thank people for coming, you cut the cake, you dance the last dance. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't confront her the next week either. What I did instead was quieter than that. I started paying attention. In the weeks after the wedding, Daniel and I had a hard, honest conversation. He told me gently but clearly that the toast had planted a seed of doubt he hadn't asked for, and that it took real effort on his part to remind himself it wasn't true. That conversation should never have needed to happen. My sister put it there. I didn't cut Camilla off. I want to be honest about that because I think it matters. I'm not someone who explodes, and I'm not someone who cuts family out over one bad moment, even a moment that bad. Instead, I did something that, looking back, was far more effective. I stopped being the fixer. For years, I had been the one who smoothed things over, who lent Camilla money when she needed it, who covered for her when she missed family obligations, who defended her when relatives complained about her. I quietly, without any announcement or confrontation, stopped doing all of that. I watched. I learned things I'd never let myself notice before, because I'd always been too busy protecting her image to see it clearly. I learned that the loan she'd taken from our mother 3 years earlier had never been paid back. I learned she'd told at least 2 mutual friends a version of the commitment issues story, as if it were simply established fact. I learned that the charm that had carried her through her whole life ran, more and more, on other people's patience that, for the first time, I was no longer supplying. 9 years is a long time. In that time, I built a career. Daniel and I built a life that had nothing to do with my sister's approval. And Camilla built exactly what she'd always built, a beautiful surface. Held up by people who hadn't yet been burned. Then last spring, she got engaged. To a man named Julian, the son of one of the most respected families in Daniel's professional circle. The kind of match Camilla had always wanted: money, status, a wedding that would be written about in the local society pages. She called me herself to ask me to be her maid of honor. I said yes. I want to be clear about something before I tell you what happened next. I did not lie. I did not invent a single thing. Everything I said at that wedding was true, and every person in that room already half knew it. They simply hadn't had a reason to say it out loud. For 9 months, I planned nothing except one toast. I helped with the flowers. I helped with the seating chart. I smiled at every family dinner. I let Camilla believe completely that whatever had happened 9 years ago was long forgiven and long forgotten. The night of her wedding, I stood up with a glass in my hand, exactly the way she had it mine. The room quieted the way rooms do for a maid of honor's toast, a mixture of genuine warmth and polite obligation. I started with real things. I talked about us as children, about how she used to steal my clothes and somehow always looked better in them. People laughed, real laughter, easy laughter. Julian's family relaxed. Camilla beamed at me from her seat. And then I said, Camilla has always known exactly what she wants and exactly how to get people to give it to her. I learned that firsthand 9 years ago at my own wedding, when she stood exactly where I'm standing now and decided the best way to introduce herself to my new husband's family was to publicly humiliate me in front of them. I forgave her for that. I want to be clear, I have forgiven her. But I also promised myself, that night, that I would never again let someone mistake her charm for kindness without at least giving them the full picture first. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I simply kept going, calm and measured, the way you'd read a fact off a page. So Julian, welcome to the family. I mean that sincerely. And I hope more than anything that Camilla has grown since that night. I think marriage has a way of showing us who someone really is underneath the performance. I know it certainly showed me. I raised my glass. To Camilla and Julian. May you always tell each other the truth, even the parts that aren't flattering. The applause that followed was thin, uncertain, scattered, the sound of a room that didn't know if it was allowed to clap. But it didn't matter. Every single person at that wedding, Julian's parents, his business partners, the society page photographer standing near the cake, now knew exactly who my sister was capable of being on the biggest day of someone else's life. Camilla found me 20 minutes later, in the hallway outside the bathrooms, her face white with rage, held just barely in check because there were still cameras nearby. How could you do that to me? She hissed. On my wedding day. I looked at her for a long moment before I answered. I didn't do anything you didn't already teach me how to do, I said. I just waited 9 years to use it. I won't pretend there wasn't a cost. My mother didn't speak to me for nearly 2 months. Some relatives called me cruel, called it petty, called it something I should have let go of years ago. Maybe they're right. I've thought about it more than I'll ever admit out loud. But here's what I know for certain. Camilla's marriage to Julian lasted 14 months. I don't know everything that happened behind closed doors, and it isn't really my place to guess. What I do know is that the version of her that charm alone used to protect had, for the first time in her life, been seen clearly by people who mattered to her. And charm, once you've seen through it, doesn't work quite the same way twice. As for me, Daniel and I celebrate our 10th anniversary this year. His family, the same family that sat frozen at that first wedding toast 9 years ago, has never once brought up commitment issues again. If anything, I think that night at Camilla's wedding did more to earn their trust than anything I could have said in my own defense. People say revenge doesn't fix anything. Maybe that's true. It didn't undo what happened at my wedding. It didn't give me back that night, or the months afterward where I second-guessed a relationship that had never deserved to be doubted in the first place. But I'll tell you what it did do. It made sure that the next time my sister stood in front of a room full of people who mattered to her, she understood clearly, permanently, that actions like that have a cost. Even 9 years later, even at your own wedding. Have you ever waited years for the right moment to get even? Tell me your story in the comments.